I'd never had an experience like this before. Never. What I felt was a transmission of unconditional love from this being to me that was unlike any other love I had experienced in this life as Nora.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Spiritually Challenged. I'm Jay Sherrick. I'm here with
David Ron,
my writing partner and my friend and neighbor,
Steve.
This is a exciting episode of Spiritually Challenged because for the first time we're going to have a guest. And I'm not going to tell you much about our guest.
It's going to be like that game show where someone comes on and says,
Yes.
Here's who I am, this is what I
What's
do,
my line?
and then we have to decide whether it's someone real or pretending to be.
But so with the guest today, would it or would it not be appropriate partway through the show to go, I'm going to say pretend?
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Would that be okay or that
Nora
would be
just
weird?
popped in.
All right. Welcome, Nora. Nora, you are the first guest on Spiritually Challenged. This is an honor to have you. You know, I was sort of always had in my back of my mind that you would be our first guest because I love you and I love you what you do. And share with us who it is, what you do, how you got to be the great Nora Herold.
Well, it goes back to Atlantis. No. I mean, yes and no. As a kid, I was always super sensitive and just kind of picked up on things, but I didn't really have language to connect to it. I was raised Catholic. But I didn't go to Catholic school, so it was like we went to church every Sunday. I got First Communion.
All right, so you're growing up, you're sort of interested in spiritual stuff.
And I'm an actress.
And you're an actress.
That self-identified as an actress, director, comedian.
And you're in Chicago, and you're doing theater and stuff like that.
Up until about the age of 29.
And then what happened?
So during my 20s, I started reading tarot cards, right? Because I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And I wanted to find a boyfriend. So, right? I thought, okay, great. I need some extra help. I'm going to use this tool. And the cards didn't really help me find a boyfriend. I actually found a girlfriend, and that happened, right? Discovering at the age of 27 that I was bisexual. Completely out of the blue discovery. And then at the age of 29, she and I had separated. It was pretty awful breakup. Now, we all go through some pretty major life shift between the ages of 28 and 30. And there's the astrological reason for this, and it's called our first Saturn return. So when we're born with the planet Saturn somewhere in our chart. And the way I like to perceive the chart is when you're born in the very center of your personal universe. And your astrological chart from a projected 3D perspective is, these are where all the planets are around me, all around me, in particular degrees of signs. So when we're born with Saturn in a particular placement, just like everything else. Saturn is a very slow-moving planet, so it only returns to our moment of birth every 28 years or so. Saturn is the kind of rules of our life, how we live. And it's where we either continue to be this version of ourselves with some tweaks or adjustments, or we go through a major fucking shift and recreate our identity. So at that age, I had my first experience of direct contact with a spirit guide. Okay, I'll shut up for a second here.
No,
Years before these life events, did you know what your chart was?
No.
But if you had known, would you have known that you were going to have a big life event between the ages of 28 and 30 or whenever it happened?
Yes, and I would have handled things a little differently.
Okay, keep going.
Everybody's Saturn returns when they're 28, 29, so everybody has a big life event typically.
Everybody, no matter where they're born.
That is correct.
Did you not understand that?
No. Okay. I thought that everybody had their own astrological chart.
Everybody has their own astrological chart. I'm annoyed that I have to keep
it would be great to have you as a guest on the podcast. I would rather have you just like as a guest like once every few months.
Everybody's got their own chart.
Yeah.
But regardless of their chart,
yeah.
Saturn is in whatever position it's in.
Yeah.
And 28 years later, it returns to that position.
Correct. For me, it's Pisces.
Right. And for me,
So,
it's something else.
Here's what I would have done differently had I known about the Saturn return energy. I wouldn't have tried to control my reality to the extent in which I was trying to control it at the time.
That's probably good advice regardless of your Saturn
Saturn
Exactly.
return.
Nora, you said when you hit 29 or so, you're going through this terrible breakup, and then an energy came into your life. Go continue with that before Steve kind of derailed the entire conversation into a remedial course on astrology, which to just show you how remedial it was, David had to step in.
Even I knew.
Hey,
I'm not an astrologer, Steve. That is not my forte. However, I pull from astrology in my work because, believe it or not, it is a more grounded way of delivering this kind of information than talking to non-physical beings is.
Well, let's get to the non-physical being.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what happened now.
Yes. So I went to my friend Amy's house, who I often read tarot cards with. She knew I was going through this terrible breakup. She's like, hey, come on over. I'll make you dinner and we can hang out. And Amy and I were talking, and she said, hey, I met this new friend, and she channels. And I said, what do you mean? She talks to dead people? That was my interpretation of it. She said, well, you could do that, but she talks to her spirit guide. And when she said the term spirit guide, something lit up inside of me. I had been searching for something that I could not name for years. I would go to Transitions, the metaphysical bookstore in Chicago, pull up a footstool, sit my ass down in front of all of the books on tarot and witchcraft and crystals and healing. And I would look and read and leave feeling frustrated. Nothing seemed to give me what I was looking for. She said the words spirit guide, and I said, that's the fucking thing. That's it. I said, have you done it? Have you connected? She said, no, I've tried, but, I've just gotten vague impressions of something. I said, well, let's do it. And there was nobody in the room to tell us that we couldn't. There was nobody there to say, you don't have the qualifications to do this, right? There was just me and Amy saying, hey, let's try. This will be fun. So we both sat and took a breath and just intended to connect with our spirit guides. And within less than a minute, I felt the energy of a being. I'd never had an experience like this before. Never. And I saw a yellow light, or I knew their energy was yellow because seeing is not one of my strongest abilities. And I knew their name started with an M. And I heard the words, I love you. But what I felt was a transmission of unconditional love from this being to me that was unlike any other love I had experienced in this life as Nora. It's hard to put into words.
That was pretty good.
It was spiritual, right? That was like when you think about someone having a spiritual experience, when you think about like the majesty of it, right? It was that. And it was brief. And then it was over, right? Because I was new at forging this connection from my end. They're always connected to us from my perspective. These beings that are with us are always loving us, whether you want to refer to them as a being or an energy or a vibration or a consciousness or whatever it is, whatever works for you. There's so many different ways to interpret it. But for me, my perspective back then was this was a singular entity expressing a male energy whose name started with M, whose light was yellow, and who loved me unconditionally. That love felt like love coming from no earthly being, and yet like the best friend you could possibly have. There was no hierarchy. There was no sense of this being is here to boss me around or tell me what to do. It was this being has my back. And I never felt that as Nora. That was immediately life-changing for me. I left her apartment remembering how to access my records, or what we might refer to as past life memories. Remembering how to access energy, run it through my body, and facilitate healing in other people. And then I just began channeling as much as I could for anyone I could, while waiting tables at the same time, right? So I'm like living your kind of regular 30-year-old steady life. I was kind of done acting. And then in this middle place of developing these abilities and waitressing as the way to support myself financially.
But Nora, you're saying that you didn't learn these abilities. Suddenly you just, because of this experience, you were able to access these abilities that you may have had in past lives, and suddenly it started to come back to you?
That and abilities that I think were always kind of dormant within me. Right? I always had that very intuitive nature. It would be like somebody who always had an affinity for piano, could just sit down and play something simply, suddenly playing a concerto. It was that kind of leap in my evolution. It was dramatic and really life-changing.
So you're discovering these abilities, and you've had this connection with this one spirit named M, Yellow M.
Yes. So shortly after, Amy and I got together with her friend Wendy, who I became friends with, and she channeled for me. And she said in her channeling, "Oh, you've already met a spirit guide. He expresses himself as this yellow light, and his name is Mirando." Which all blew me away to get that confirmation of my own experience. And this was not information in any way that I had communicated to Wendy, or that Amy had communicated to Wendy prior to us getting together. Then the three of us just got together and channeled all the time. We were all waitressing at the time, so we would just gather in my small garden apartment in Bucktown, channeling for each other, channeling for other people, having fun with it. And then at some point, I started to feel like, this perhaps is what I'm going to do next in a more formalized way. And I heard it from them, and I felt it in me, but I also had a struggle with it. I was like, no, I'm not going to accept money from people for me to channel for them or give them guidance about their lives. And so then the restaurant I'd worked at for almost 10 years closed. And they were like, okay, go, time to do it. And I was like, no. And I got another waitressing job, and I lasted 2 weeks. It became intolerable for me to be there, to do that work. So after I had my first contact experience, I returned to Transitions Bookstore shortly afterwards. And I again sat myself down in front of all the books. And then for the first time, I turned my head to the left. And to the left were all of the books on channeling.
Wow.
I had not ever looked at that shelf prior to establishing contact with my guide. So that was about timing for me.
Yeah.
Right? So we just can't control the timing in the universe.
Can I ask a quick question? Does everybody have a spirit guide, or do you have to be a channeler to have a spirit guide?
Everyone has guides.
Is everyone able to access them, or is it some people just cannot bridge that gap?
Greetings, David, Steve, Jay. This is the Pleiadian Collective. We thought we would come in and respond to your question here.
Welcome, and thank you for coming in.
Yes. So we like to describe it this way, David, to answer that question you're asking. Mm-hmm. So imagine humanity is on the AM band of radio frequency, right? And we're on the FM band.
Okay.
So if you want to listen to our channels, you have to jump to the FM band, right? However, we really want to connect with you all. So it's not even that difficult. What Nora did that night in Amy's apartment is, through that meditation and her intention to connect, she raised her personal vibration just a bit as we lowered ours, and we met on a common bandwidth and had connection, conversation. It's different for her now. She's always connected now. So there's no need. And you saw it happen very quickly here as we were working with you here today. That's not how it used to be for her. She used to have to take time to breathe, connect, clear her shit out, put herself in a space, where she could feel the connection. And initially, her connection and contacts were very brief moments, a few words, a sentence, then she would fall out of it, right? It's like building a muscle. So for any of you who don't regularly intend to connect, have this experience, what you can use as a reference point are those moments in your life when you suddenly knew exactly the thing to say to the person who was in need, and afterwards you thought, where the fuck did that come from? How did I know that? Mm-hmm. That was you plugging into this bigger data bank of support, love, information, and pulling from that resource.
That's amazing. Can Nora or the Pleiadians describe for us who the Pleiadians are? And if someone could just explain who we're talking to at this point.
Yes, we'll stay here with you, the Pleiadians. So we like to describe ourselves as a consciousness, right? A frequency, a healing vibration. There's a lot of mythology out there on your world about contact with extraterrestrials, origins of your world that include extraterrestrial, both creation and interference. That's not our bag with you all. We could give some information about that, but we see it really as mythology. It's just another potential origin story to help you all understand something that, frankly, goes beyond your conscious understanding as third-dimensional beings with a third-dimensional mental body. So we present ourselves as this idea that we are a healing energy, a resource, a support, a vibration of love connected to the Pleiades star system, and yet not in any way connected to an idea of physicality of that star system. This is Nora. That's funny. I knew we were going to talk about this earlier today. And I through the years, I've gone through so many different descriptions, and they've brought through so many different descriptions about who they are, right? And what their intent is, what their reason is, what their purpose is. Sort of at the end of the day, it doesn't really fucking matter if the love, the support, the information serves, is of benefit, and is helpful. And yet it also matters because here in the third dimension, we like to have something solid to grab onto and hold on to. And there's a lot of misinterpretation right now about the Pleiadian energy as, beings that are going to land here in ships and save us all, right? They're going to take us to some magical Earth that's way better than this Earth, but the bad people are going to stay on this Earth and suffer. And I'm like, isn't that just a repackaging of Christianity, right? And the rapture. There's a lot of that happening right now. And I've gone through, in the last 30 years, so many different understandings of what is happening on Earth, why we are here on Earth. I've really gotten to the point where I feel like we're just all here to be here, and that healing is a lifelong journey. And the more we can integrate that understanding of our self that knows itself to be love incarnate, that knows we are love in the physical and operate from this place, the healthier we each are individually, the healthier we are in relationship with those around us, the more we can create the life we desire for ourselves and the collective. So that's the direction my work has gone.
So can you use the term third dimensional reality? We're all living here in the third dimensional reality. Can you sort of explain a little bit what that means?
Yes, this is the Pleiadians. We'll talk about it. So, right, matter is physical, time is linear. There are certain laws. You are in individuated form. David, you cannot put your hand through the table in front of you. This is a law of 3D, right? This is just science. We exist in a much higher dimensional vibration. We come from a 12th dimensional perspective. You are all, from our perspective, this is the story that we tell, and the story we tell through Nora. You are all in the process of downloading and integrating or installing, we like to use computer metaphors, your fifth dimensional consciousness. Your fifth dimensional consciousness is not bound by the laws of the third dimension. So Nora uses portions of her fifth dimensional technology to channel. You all have access to this fifth dimensional technology, but just portions of it. You run it through your heart centers, and if your mental body gets too involved, you shut it down. Because your mental body is where the rules of third dimensional life are firmly entrenched.
I just want to say this is so great. And I'm loving this so much, and I can't even imagine what Steve is thinking.
Yes, Steve, how are you feeling right now? No. Not what do you think. How are you feeling right now as this is unfolding?
Oh, so I can't really ask a question.
Correct. We're asking you a question. How are you feeling? This is the Pleiadians. Take a breath, Steve. You are very mental. You spend a lot of time in your headspace, right? We don't mean mental, Jay. So take a breath, and David, you can do this. Jay, you all can do it. So just take a breath, and as you exhale, imagine a relaxation here and a recentering of your energy in your heart, as if your heart is the brain. So it's the heart center that is the center for connection. It's the center for all of this kind of work that Nora's talking about and that you all play with, that Jay focuses on in a more conscious way. It's the heart. To be honest, it is easier in your society for beings aligned with female bodies to head in this direction because females are encouraged to be more heart-centered. Males are not. You were not raised to be heart-centered, feeling-based beings. You were raised to produce, you were raised to think, you were raised to strategize, right? But all it takes is an observation of the self. How often it is you run to the headspace as opposed to allowing a full feeling and engagement with the heart and feeling-based reality for yourself. All it takes is observing this and then inviting it. That can facilitate a shift where you do experience more in your own body, more direct connection yourself, more vibrational experience, because we're not just coming through Nora right now, we're also right here with all of you. To even listen to channeled information means on some level, you have to have engaged those technologies in your heart center, even with Nora as the voice, because we are not just communicating verbally. In fact, we're not communicating verbally at all. We communicate in a huge download dump of energy that Nora then unpacks and translates into language.
Can you explain to me how you're processing going between Nora, then referring to Nora, and who you are or what you are when you are referring to Nora?
So the referring to Nora is the Pleiadians coming through me directly, referring to me, using me as an example. I'm not gone in that moment. I'm a very conscious channel, right? So the way I like to explain it is it's kind of like I just move myself a little bit back in my body and allow this to come to the front. But this that comes to the front is always here. So you have to take yourself out of 3D to fully understand what happens when I'm channeling. It's not like in the moment they're just feeding those words through me. It's that as soon as we all agreed to have this conversation together, the download for the conversation I received, and I've been unpacking it since we had this agreed upon meeting, which is why yesterday, the day before, I was like, we're going to talk about, I knew some of the things we would talk about. Some are just common, right? These are the questions that are going to be asked. Right. But what I was also getting were kind of new pieces of information or responses that I haven't given before, not quite the way I gave them today.
Okay. The Pleiadians, who are they? Where do they exist? They're a collective. Can you sort of explain collective? And
You are individuals, right? We are a collective, meaning we're this gigantic blob of energy that is comprised of individual consciousnesses, and yet at the same time, we cannot, nor do we want, to separate out our individual consciousnesses. So we are like this gigantic blob of energy. Now, where we are located, you're asking us to explain something from the third dimension that we can't give a third dimensional response to. Right. For Nora, we're located in her body, always.
Okay.
That's the access point.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Is helping us or healing us your prime objective?
What a great question.
Or do you have your own experience and this is something you do on the side like a hobby?
We would say it's more than a hobby and yet not our only experience. We are very much invested in you all due to, now this goes into mythology, some pieces around the creation of, so the story we tell about life on Earth is that Earth is a melting pot of all genetic information from all across the universe. So like the United States formed as a melting pot of Earth, Earth formed as a melting pot of universal life, universal experiences. How that all happened, there are many different versions. We don't even give specific story around that other than it was an experiment and a way to heal conflicts and war that had arisen throughout the galaxies. So all of the war that you see on planet Earth is a reflection of bigger wars that occurred. Yeah, it's very Star Wars-like, and we like to say, well, nothing is ever really just made up on your world. You are always all on some level influenced by information, data, ideas, and sometimes pulling from the ethers. So Star Wars, from our perspective, in a lot of ways, captures some of the information, and then there is much more. So genetically, you all carry pieces of information that is, we'll use the term extraterrestrial in origin. Nora personally carries pieces that are Pleiadian in origin. That's not all she carries. That's not all she is, but it's a piece of her. So if you were to pair in a home a being who has Pleiadian DNA and a being who has Arcturian DNA, right? And they were at war at one point. Then in the home, the husband and wife sharing different universal genetic makeups, have an argument, come to an agreement or an understanding, heal something on a very small level between them, that energy radiates outwards and offers bigger universal healing.
Wow. And so you're invested in the planet Earth because
we're all connected in this universe. And we're invested because we are all connected. Yeah. We are all one.
And what do you hope for humanity?
We don't really have a hope or an intention for you all because we don't work in a goal-oriented, outcome-based kind of understanding of reality as you all do. Our desire is to be of service to humanity and to facilitate for every single one of you the integration of your higher self or your fifth dimensional consciousness into the density of your human forms, however long that takes.
And when Nora was speaking, Nora has sort of repeatedly used the word love to describe the feeling that she had at the moment she first met you. When somebody jumps to the FM band, is that what they derive from the experience? Is it about love and having your back?
It is that first, right? It's an ecstatic experience of, it's not just feeling the connection of love. It is the full remembrance in the moment that love is not really a feeling state. Love is what you are. Love is what we are. This universe is constructed of love. What you see reflected on your world are those who are in conscious remembrance of this and those whose fears have clouded that memory and are existing in an absence of that love within themselves. So you have clear examples of this on your world. And for each one of you individually, you'll move back and forth on the spectrum. You'll have moments of feeling that state of I'm love incarnate. I am valuable simply because I exist. And then you'll forget and feel your value is only able to be achieved through production and other people's points of view.
I wanted to ask, because in a lot of Nora's writings and her channeling that, she makes public, there's been a lot of talk about, this tremendous shift that our third dimensional reality is embarking upon, or maybe even more than embarking upon. Can you just talk about the shift?
Yes, this is just a very simplistic kind of way of describing it. This is the Pleiadians again. Nora always tries to let everyone know who's speaking, but she also wants you all to know, so we'll say this for her, that the Faeries are also here very much wanting to share something as well. Okay. So we've got to get to that today. From our perspective, you each individually as humans are in this process of integrating your fifth dimensional consciousness or your higher self. We use those terms interchangeably. On the winter solstice of 2012, so there was all this hoopla about the Mayan calendar in 2012, blah, 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 right? So nothing really seemed to have changed, but from our perspective, something major changed. What occurred at that point is the blueprints for incarnation shifted. All beings who were born after the winter solstice of 2012 have come in with access to their higher selves throughout the totality of their energetic system in their bodies. So all of you who came in prior to the winter solstice of 2012 now have the opportunity to begin to integrate your higher self from your third energy centers on down, or third chakras or solar plexus, however you want to refer to it. Prior to that point, you really could only access your higher self in your upper energy centers, heart on up, and most people were experiencing the connection with the higher self as a being that was outside of you, right, that would sit here to give you guidance, information. So while humanity is doing this, imagine that Earth itself has a similar kind of energetic structure as each of you humans do. So the planet is in the process of downloading and integrating a higher / fifth dimensional version. And when we say higher, we don't mean better. We just have to use that term because in the third dimension, this is how you understand things. So it's just a different perspective. It's a different way of operating. There's another piece that's coming in here, and this is astrological. Pluto has just entered the sign of Aquarius for the first time in 248 years, and Pluto will be in Aquarius for about 20 years. Pluto is the change maker planet. It is often referred to as the cosmic enema. It comes in, it clears out everything, shows where healing is needed. So for instance, Pluto originally moved into Capricorn in January of 2008. As that coincided with the too big to fail financial collapse, where the big industries, banking industries, were propped up, and the individual and collective humanity was pretty much left as secondary. That's a very kind of Capricornian way to be, right? Big business, capitalism. We're not dissing Capricorns here for anyone who's a Capricorn. Aquarius is very humanitarian focused. Aquarius says, until the most vulnerable among us is cared for, none of us are cared for. Pluto, for the next 20 years, is going to point out to all of you where you are doing this and where you are not, and open doors for healing and shifts. This coincides with the integration of the higher self into the human bodies, into the planet, and of course, it's not a process that's going to complete in 20 years. This is a process that will be ongoing for a long time. We have no deadlines.
So given the power and authority that you have, why don't you put together a marketing plan and get the word out so that more people...
You know, the prime directive in Star Trek, right? The prime directive is we can't interfere with other civilizations, right? I love that theme in Star Trek, right? That they could travel the universe and go to all these other worlds, but they were not allowed to interfere with a society that had not yet developed to the place that they were at, right? It's similar to that. It's like asking, why does God make bad things happen? That's basically the question that you're asking. Why doesn't God just come and fix it all, right? That's not the point of this exercise. The point of the exercise is for each one of us to experience this reality. And from my perspective, we're on an infinite spectrum of experiences. Now, I'm not saying this to excuse the abuses of power that are occurring on our world. I do not see them as helpful. I do not see them as instructive. I see them as keeping us in a loop of suffering. This is the Pleiadians, which is something else that we often address. The truth that you use suffering on your world, or at least you think, all of you use suffering on your world to grow. And you've gotten to the point where you believe that suffering is necessary to grow. The truth is, suffering simply begets more suffering. End of story. The only reason growth occurs is because somebody chooses to step into a more loving space and facilitate their growth.
Right, but I don't think of it as, why doesn't God or why don't all of you come make all the bad stuff go away? Nora didn't say, oh, by channeling, everything bad in my life went away. Nora said that.
It didn't. It's true.
Nora just said that there was this feeling of being enveloped by love by somebody who had their back.
Yes, we are always broadcasting from that availability, and yet, because you all have free will, there is nothing we can do about somebody who is unwilling to tap into that love.
So what about if someone is willing to tap into that love, right? One of the things that struck me is that you had an aha moment when you first got the channel and you sort of felt yellow, you felt the name M, and then you had this incredible moment where someone said, oh, yeah, you've already tapped into something and it's yellow and his name, I forget his name exactly, but it's an M name, and you sort of got this like, wow, how could they possibly know? Like, if I want, one of the themes for me is like, prove it. I want my Mirando moment, right? So like I can imagine something, I can feel something, I can have a moment in nature, but I want that lightning bolt moment. You know what I mean? I want
Absolutely. That. So for that to happen, you must 100% suspend your disbelief. If you are unwilling to suspend your disbelief, you will never have those confirmational moments. That was something I was willing to do. I went into the experience and knew if I was going to have a magical experience, I was going to have to suspend my disbelief in magic. And I'm a very skeptical, intellectual person, right? I was like straight A, science-y, smart girl. That's my former identity. But there was also something in me that believed in magic, believed in it so strongly that I didn't need proof.
But you had to like turn that off, that block, that skepticism, just turn it off and open yourself to the possibility of it in order to have that experience.
Yes.
That's a little depressing for David.
I'm sorry, Dave.
He doesn't know if he can do that.
You know, I've had numerous like big magical experiences since where I've proven to myself that magic is real. I was being followed home one night. I was 30 years old at the time by two guys in a car. I was getting near to my apartment. I was very uncomfortable with their presence. I did not want them to see where I lived. We were stopped at a red light and I took a breath and went like this with my hand to their car, and their hood flew up. Now, I don't think I made the hood, do that. It wasn't really just me. I think I tapped into something beyond our third dimensional experience, that I tapped into some level of energy where that happened.
Right.
Those kinds of things are very few and far between for me. They're really just magic tricks. They're distraction. I think the reason, in part, I had a few of those things early on is because my interest was so focused on this. I was already laying the foundation for this to be my work. Therefore, I needed, as a confidence builder within myself, those kinds of experiences.
Right. I need those too in order. It's a
chicken and an egg situation.
It is.
It's kind of chicken before the egg. For me, it was I needed to put myself in a vulnerable and open state to allow the connection and those experiences. And again, as a female, I'm more programmed to do that. It's simpler for me to go there.
Yeah, I mean, so like every psychic I've ever spoken to has always said, "Oh, do you know you're psychic? You're psychic." And I was like,
I work with Dave, and he's incredibly psychic. I mean,
clearly, right.
But I don't feel that at all. You know,
well, because you're very claircognizant. So for you, you don't have a feeling-based experience of connection. You have a deep sense of knowing that just feels fucking regular to you.
Right. Maybe. Yeah.
Wait, no. Just say, let that click.
Okay.
Claircognizance is the most so we have a number of different ways we connect. We have clairvoyance, which is people have visions, then see things and lights and colors or movies in their third eye. We have clairaudience, which is hearing voices. So I have some clairaudience. We have clairsentience, which is a very feeling-based experience of connection, emotionally and viscerally. And then we have claircognizance, which is just this very flat, no sensation, sense of knowing, grounded, like what's the big deal? Often people are dominant in their claircognizance, so typically we're dominant in one or two of these abilities, have no recognition of their own psychic or intuitive ability because to them, to you, it feels like, this is how everyone operates. It's not.
I want to invite the fairies in. You said the fairies wanted to chime in, and yes. I'm like, I wanted to hear what a fairy has to say.
Okay, good. Yeah. Oh, are you Irish?
A little bit.
Yeah, I could feel your Celtic roots there. I looked away, and I had just, I started to access your records, not just in this life, but a few lifetimes of yours, David, where you were very Irish.
Yeah. David, on a number of occasions, has asked us to address him as the Lord of the Dance. So you can just as
you can refer to him as that if you.
The Lord of the Dance. Excellent. Ursula will love that.
All right.
This is Ursula. Greetings. I am a fairy, but right away we want you to get rid of the image of Tinkerbell. Throw it away, right? Tiny, winged, mischievous being doesn't quite sum up who we are. We like to use the term the fairies, capital T, capital F, as an umbrella term to help you all understand your connections with many different kinds of beings that fall into this category. The traditional fairy being one, but again, clear weight, Tinkerbell. If we were to come into the room with you right now, as we are in light body form, we would be around 10 feet tall in our expression. Let yourselves take a breath here, drop into your hearts as we're working with you. We tend to express a very joyful, lively energy and love to facilitate and collaborate on creative expressions. So any kind of creative expression, whether that be a purely artistic expression of creativity in one of your well-known arts on your world, or a more broad understanding of the expression of your creative energy in how you identify as a being, how you express yourself, the way you dress, the way you move, the simplest tasks on your world all have a creative component, and creativity and the understanding of the power in your own creative energy is another point of contact and connection for you all on planet Earth. Okay, so who are we? Why are we here? Why the fuck are we hanging out with all of you humans, right? Well, we love Earth. And yes, this is not all we do in the universe, like you were asking about the Pleiadians. There are beings who are assigned to Earth and humanity, assigned, meaning they self-assign themselves to this process of integration of the higher self that is occurring at this time, right? We're here and we're elsewhere as well, but we exist in a fifth dimensional vibration. We're closer to where you are headed in your own shift in consciousness and shift in reality than any other being you connect with. So we encourage all of you humans to invite us into your lives, invite us into your physical spaces, and let yourselves appreciate a more conscious collaboration with our energy. When you are in need of upliftment, we are your go-to, the Faeries.
And so you guys exist within the fifth dimension, which the Pleiadians were saying we are all in the process of moving from the third into the fifth. And for some reason, I heard in the past that you kind of skip through four. Four is a highway. Is the highway to the fifth. The jump between, this is Nora here, the jump between existing in the third dimension and existing in the fourth is such a huge shift. The fourth dimension is being used as a gateway for that experience. The fourth dimension allows for both a third dimensional experience, a fifth dimensional experience, and a blended of the third and fifth dimensional. Like, that's for me where I try to live. My awareness is that I am more than this identity at all times. Except for a really bad, like a really bad fucking day, right? On a really bad day when I'm sitting with my childhood trauma and wounds and recycling back through and feeling complete lack of value, then I have forgotten that I am all that. As someone progresses into the fifth dimension, would we be able to see Ursula in this room? She says she's here in energy form, in light form. Yes, this is Ursula. Yes, that is what occurs. In the fifth dimension, you have so right now, you're able to access fifth dimensional technology through your heart center and not really through your mental bodies at all. Again, your mental bodies are third dimensional. They're like a set of filters that keep you in the third dimension, that keep you playing the game that you came here to play. But what happens over time as you more and more default to your heart centers is those filters in the third dimensional mental body start to come down, and an implementation of a fifth dimensional mental body starts to take hold. Right, this is Nora. So that is something that I have gone through. For instance, I was sitting on my couch one night watching TV. My dining room was over to my right. And back then I was working with a fairy being named Kalyandra, who I connected with right before I was about to do a radio interview back in 2012. I felt her come in. I was like, oh, this is a fairy. Cool. And then I tried to get her name. And I heard like Kalyana, but that didn't quite feel right. And then suddenly I got, Kalyandra. It's Kalyandra. I did the interview that night. And then I Googled the word Kalyandra. I thought, oh, this is interesting. Like, what the fuck does Kalyandra mean, right? So Kalyandra is a flower. It's actually native to LA. You have them all around you. They're flowering trees and shrubs. And its common name is fairy duster. I had no idea. I heard the word Kalyandra. I Googled the word Kalyandra. Right. And there it is right in front of me on screen, the word fairy. Kalyandra is fairy. Okay, yes. Right. So I was sitting watching TV, and out of the corner of my eye, right where I had first connected with Kalyandra, I saw like a kind of like a zipper. And I'm not very clairvoyant. I don't often see things. So this is very unusual. And I saw this kind of splitting of the energy, and I saw Kalyandra step through. And she was huge. And I knew she was Kalyandra. I know her. I feel love with her. But my central nervous system freaked the fuck out. My body was like, what the fuck is happening? Partly because my third dimensional mental body, those filters are like,
red flag, you're not supposed to be doing this. Not an earthly experience, right? And she just kind of laughed and then faded away. And that was that. I work with Ursula now. So Ursula used to be my cat. We had a couple of cats that we adopted in California, and Ursula was this beautiful Maine Coon cat who died in the fall of 2019. And I always knew she was a fairy in cat form. It was very clear to me that she projected fairy energy through her cat body, and animals are wonderful at this. They're much easier at bringing through different kinds of loving beings because they don't have the filters in place that we have. So she died, and she immediately let me know that she would be returning back to me as one of the beings I would channel in my public speaking. And I was like, no, right? It's enough with like the Pleiadians and the extraterrestrials. I'm not going to channel my dead cat. The day she died, John and I, my husband, partner, John and I came home and we took a nap. We both were lying in bed and the house was filled with the sound of purring. It was an auditory experience of purring that we both heard. Like, again, undeniable. The very next time I sat down to do a group session, right, I opened my mouth and there she was. It just didn't matter that Nora was like, I don't really want to do that, right? Because I did want to do it, of course. And Ursula has been very prominent in my work since, in that uplifting energy. And that works for me. Like, I like to go around being an uplifter myself. It's one of my favorite things to do is wander the city and say nice things to people.
Was your cat Ursula in cat form, or was your cat a soul who is getting a lot of influence from this?
She was Ursula in cat form.
In cat form.
Yes.
And a fairy might choose to incarnate as a cat.
Yes.
To experience what that's like.
Correct. And a human might and would choose to incarnate as a fairy or many other things. Right. This is the Pleiadians. So let us say this, right? This game that you're all playing in this universe, it's not like a video game where you start at the lowest level and work your way up. It's the opposite. All consciousness begins at the highest rate of vibration in this universe. We are all source energy. This is our point of origin. And then individuation of energy occurs and individuated beings occur on different dimensions. And you play a game of hopscotch all over the dimensional structure across the universe. So in your last lives, you may have been ninth dimensional beings. In your next life, you may be fifth dimensional being. And it doesn't really even work that way because we're telling it from a third dimensional perspective where time is linear, but out of the third dimension, everything is happening all at once.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Largely the message we like to communicate is this reality can be as magical as you want it to be, but you have to want it.
Are you talking to David now, Ursula?
No, we're not talking to anyone in particular.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like you're looking at me, but whatever. I
love that message, though, that the world is as magical as you want it to be.
Yes. And you can have that perspective without bypassing the very real suffering that is occurring on your world. And that has been a problem in what you all would call the New Age community. Too much love and light, bullshit, bypassing, right? Not enough acknowledgement of what is occurring on the ground. You can acknowledge what is occurring on the ground, feel your feelings fully about the experience, and also find magic and genuine joy in the moment. Like that to me is the healing path, that right there. That's where Operate From Joy comes from. That's a hashtag I created years ago. Operate From Joy. It's this very simple healing technology of feel your feelings without judgment. Whatever you're feeling is necessary. Observe yourself in the moment of your feeling, which allows for total self-acceptance, which triggers a transmission of unconditional love that runs through the self and goes to any version of you in any moment of time and space that needs that unconditional love, which then facilitates the ability to genuinely operate from joy.
That's great. I love that. In closing, just to sort of like bring it back to the theme of the podcast for one moment, I just wanted to sort of query my co-hosts here, because now they've been introduced to you and you've explained so much, and you've brought in other entities to communicate with them. And I don't know how candid they can be with you sitting right there. So maybe this is a conversation better for after you, but let's just see what happens. So do you feel that there's an energy that's somehow related to Pleiades, and that energy then just spoke through Nora and communicated to you? Do you believe that just happened? And Nora, is it okay if they're just honest?
Of course.
Okay.
I don't know.
I love that answer.
I don't know. I'm as confused as I ever was, and the idea of suspending disbelief is so anathema to me, because disbelief is my protection, you know. And,
I love that you said that. That disbelief, it is.
It's a prove it, you know, mentality.
But
you know what I mean?
You said, I'm sorry, Dave.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna do my thing.
Do your thing.
You said disbelief is your protection. You put that protection in place a long time ago for very real reasons. It is a fear of being vulnerable, because your belief is that if you are vulnerable, you are potentially weaker. You can be hurt. This is the Pleiadians. Perhaps for a moment, reimagine your vulnerability as a superpower. It's what gives you access.
Okay.
The more vulnerable you are, the more access you give yourself, the more everyone who wants to love you has access to you. It is hard for you to receive love. Yes.
Yeah, very, very, very.
Yes. Take a breath. Take a breath. Like really inhale and exhale, and put your hand on your heart and let your affirmation be, I am safe, I am protected, and I am loved. Just right now. Just for now.
Feels good. What do you think, Steve?
I'm a little scared now. So
I worked on you on the break.
You did work on me on the break.
I was a little sneakier. I was sneakier with you.
So Nora, I love the fact that you were our first guest. There's so many wonderful, beautiful moments that you created for us on the show. I'm very grateful.
Well, you all are amazing. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Nora.
It's really nice meeting you, Nora.
You too. You too. Thank you.